Welcome to the True You Summit. I'm Carrie Rubin, your summit host and Chief Mom Officer at the Modern Mom Society. I'm excited to bring you this summit to help you get the tools you need to live an authentic and joyful mom life that's aligned to what your body, soul, and mind desires. I hope you enjoyed this limited time free interview with one of the 15 experts that are here to discuss how you can get closer to your true you. Each day of the summit, we will explore 5 different areas of your life where you can improve your connection to your true you as a busy mom. Parenting, mom life, authenticity, spirituality, and mind and body. You'll have 24 hours free access to listen to the 3 experts discussing the topic of the day. Otherwise, you can purchase lifetime access to these life-changing series of interviews. There are 2 different packages available. The basic package, which includes all 15 interviews in MP3 format, can be purchased for $29, or the deluxe package, which includes all 15 interviews in audio, video, and transcript format, so you can get this great information whichever way you prefer. Plus, the deluxe package also includes bonus PDFs. One is the How to Connect to Your True You guide. It highlights the ways that the experts shared in their interview as to how they personally connect to their true selves, as well as the common ideas and themes throughout. So if you're new to connecting to your true you, or you're out of practice, you can start trying on these different ways of getting in tune with your inner wisdom, intuition, and true self right away. The second bonus PDF is Key Takeaways from the Summit. As I was recording all of these interviews, I noticed common themes and threads throughout. And this bonus document highlights these keys, so you'll be sure to get the most important ideas and begin to make shifts towards a happier, joyful, more aligned, and more fulfilled mom life today. The $29 and $59 prices for the basic and deluxe packages are good now through the end of the summit on May 10th. After that, the prices will go up to $59 and $89 respectively. So if you think you're going to miss any of these great interviews, or you'll know you want to have lifetime access to them, be sure to grab your True You Summit package upgrade today. Here's today's interview. I hope you enjoy it. Hi, and welcome to the True You Summit presented by the Modern Mom Society. I'm Carrie Rubin, your summit host and Chief Mom Officer at the Modern Mom Society. I'm excited to bring you this summit to help you get the tools you need to live an authentic and joyful mom life that is aligned to what your body, soul, and mind desires. Today's expert is Casey O'Rourke. Casey is a mom of 2 teens, a positive discipline trainer, parent coach, and the host of the Joyful Courage podcast. Her vision is for all the people in the world to come from a place of love and abundance, and in doing so, create a more loving and abundant world. Casey was the very first guest I had on the Modern Mom Society podcast, and I've been following her work closely since then. I love her playfulness and candor, especially around the parenting challenges she has with her children. In this interview, we discuss positive discipline and how parenting challenges can help us as parents become better people, as our children are wonderful mirrors for the work we need to do in this lifetime. We both share examples of how our children have helped us learn and grow as humans, and I even had a light bulb moment about one of the challenges I have with my daughter frequently, and what it was there to teach me. I'm sure you'll love Casey as much as I do. Ready? Here's the interview. Welcome to the True You Summit, Casey. I'm so excited to work with you again.
Yay, me too. Thanks for having me.
I knew as soon as I decided to do the summit that I wanted to have you on to talk about what you've learned about yourself as a result of parenting, because one of the things I love about you in your Facebook group and the lives that you do is that you're very candid about the struggles that you have with your kids. So
much to their dismay.
Well, in a sense of just saying like, hey, I'm a positive discipline trainer and I struggle with it too. So I love that about you. But could you talk a little bit about positive discipline and how that's different from traditional parenting, and how that might illuminate what the work we have to do on ourselves in this world?
Yeah, totally. So positive discipline is founded in a whole other school of thought around behavior than the traditional methods and mindset that most of us were raised with. So most of us were raised with the idea, and they call it behaviorism, right? That if kids do the right thing, we reward them. And then when they do the wrong thing, we give them some kind of punishment so that they know that what they've done is wrong. Mm-hmm. And that by doing that, kids will learn over time to do the right thing. That's the idea of behaviorism on a very surface level. And then positive discipline is based in Adlerian theory, which is work that he was one of the first social psychologists. His name was Alfred Adler. He worked with humans, and his finding was that human behavior is always movement away from feeling less than and towards a sense of belonging and significance. So connection and mattering. And in positive discipline, what we talk about a lot is, you know, how we all, and it's so great. The thing that I love about positive discipline is it's this parenting program, but really it's this opportunity for personal growth and development inside of parenting. Like that's really immediately what was highlighted for me, even without the facilitator saying like, oh, hey, personal growth. That's definitely where the angle that I took with it in my own personal practice. And that's definitely something that I highlight as a facilitator of positive discipline. So the idea is to look at behavior, you know, to use the iceberg metaphor. So often the behaviors that we see, the behaviors that are annoying, right? The behaviors we want to change because they're super inconvenient to us or hurtful or antisocial or fill in the blank. You know, that's the tip of the iceberg. And under the surface of the iceberg are things like, is the child feeling connected to his or her parents, family, community? Is there a sense of, is there a real belief that they matter, that what they do, that they're contributing to their life, that they have influence, right? And plus there's things like, are they hungry? Are they angry? Are they lonely? Are they tired? I think we're very forgiving to adults. Well, maybe that's not the right word, but you know, it's like, oh, well, I'm just tired. I'm sorry that I'm being so grumpy to you. You know, we're quick to say that, but then when it comes time for our kids to be grumpy or less than, it's like, well, just because you're tired, do not use that as an excuse. Right. Right. And so, you know, it's really, it's a lot more holistic, I think, an approach. And it's really, really, really based in building relationship with our kids. So, I mean, there are many books written about positive discipline. I just gave you like a 3-minute.
Yeah, the little quick overview. And I knew you were all about the positive discipline, but I didn't realize that your focus was more about the parent until I went back on your website and started digging around. And one of the quotes that I found was, parenting isn't about them, it's all about us. Can you explain what you meant by that?
Well, it's funny because when I do live classes, when you get trained in positive discipline to be a facilitator, you are trained to facilitate like a standard 7-week class. And it's based in experiential learning. So it's role playing, it's group dynamic, it's really fun and interactive. And by about week 3, the parents typically will come in and say, this isn't like, my problem isn't even my kids. My problem is me. And I laugh and I say, yeah, you know, I don't put that on the flyer because people don't tend to sign up. But once we start to recognize how we influence the climate of our home, the relationship that we're in with our kids, we can make changes internally, right? We can focus on how we are showing up in the relationship. And then the ripple effect is really powerful. Really powerful. So
yeah, it's really interesting when you shift your perspective when you're dealing with your children and kind of step outside of yourself and figure out what they need as opposed to the fact that they're being annoying.
Yeah, and there's a lot of people that are not humble enough. Is that the right word? I mean, it takes a lot of humility to say, I mean, I've had actually only one person in all the years that I've been teaching positive discipline, which is since 2007. I've had only one parent where the personal growth piece was too much. And she stopped coming because it was just too much for her. You know, I mean, I'm making stories up about her. I think that's why. Maybe she just didn't like me, but I'm super likable. So I'm not thinking that was the problem.
Of course not.
But I mean, it's challenging to hold up a mirror and take a look at where we're influencing the dynamic that we're experiencing with our kids. I have a 16-year-old daughter. She is really good at letting me know things like, you know, this isn't about you. You're making this about you. You always have to be right. You know, and in those moments when she delivers that feedback, I have a choice. One is I can take the feedback, and more likely than not, the answer is, yeah, you're right. Or I can feel that bruising of my ego, and I can, you know, come back at her with, you don't know what you're talking about, or whatever, you know, like come from that hurt place. But it's a lot of work to be able to, you know, recognize that we are not, as humans getting to the point of being the parent, we are not done with our own social, emotional development. And I think our kids really come to us, you know, with the purpose. One of their purposes is to highlight all sorts. I think everybody who comes into our life is an opportunity to recognize, oh, this is another place that I can grow, right? But our kids especially, I mean, oh my God.
Oh yeah. They know how to push all the buttons, and especially because they're living with you.
Yeah.
And not fully mentally developed, they can really push those buttons.
Yeah. And I don't even think that it's, you know, it's not like they're seeking out the buttons.
No.
You know, it's not like, I don't think that they're conscious of that. And that's the other thing that I get makes me sad is when I listen to parents who are like, oh, they're just trying to manipulate me, or they're just trying to get a rise. And all humans want is deep connection and to feel seen and loved. Like, that's what we're wired for. So if that's the case, then it doesn't really make sense that our children's core purpose is to make us not want to be anywhere near them, right? Because ultimately what they want, I mean, I can hear my 16-year-old, she's probably like, actually, you could leave me alone a little bit more. But ultimately, they want a healthy relationship with their parents. You know? So
I would love for you to share an example or two of things that you've learned about yourself through your parenting challenges, like the practical application of what we're talking about, because I think it's kind of hard to wrap your head around if you don't. I mean, if you're just seeing the annoying behavior and you're not seeing it as something to work on for yourself. Can you think of any examples?
I can. One, I'm totally controlling. I feel safe when I know what's going on, when I know the agenda. I am super judgmental. Surprise. And I think inside of that, like that control and that judgment is my kids receiving messages that I don't mean to be sending. Right? Like that they aren't capable, that their voice doesn't matter, that they aren't good enough. Those are big ones that I'm working on all the time. You know, because there's, you know, and I talk about my kids as my teachers, and I think because I've chosen positive discipline as the framework, we talk about emotional intelligence all the time, and We're very transparent. I'm very transparent about what's going on for me. And sometimes it looks like coming back and making amends and making things right because I've blown off the handle about something.
Mm-hmm.
And because of that, they are really good at being very direct when I'm not showing up well.
What a gift and annoying.
Yeah, lucky me. So, and sometimes sometimes I have to kind of dissect their behavior to get to that place. Like I'm remembering a particular time and I tell this story in my new book that's coming out. I tell this story about my son. I think it was maybe third grade. We had a really flowing, open summer, and we came into the school year, and I knew we were going to need some afternoon routines. And, I just kind of phoned it in when it came to sitting down with him and really looking at the afternoon. I pretty much ran the show and then had him rewrite everything in his own handwriting as though that was buy-in.
Yeah.
And then for like 3 weeks, we were just battling after school. And I remember thinking like, oh man, is this like that time when your little boy pulls away from you? And like, it just hurt my heart. And I thought we were transitioning into, I don't know what. And then we were all together as a family and we were drawing, we were doing some kind of crafty thing. And Ian was having a hard time. And I said, oh, do you want a suggestion? Or I gave him a suggestion probably.
Mm-hmm.
And he's just looked at me and he said, you are always telling me what to do. And he fell apart. And I was like, it was like emotion and like big fall apart. And I was conscious enough to think, okay.
That was disproportionate.
Yeah, that was not a normal, like, no thanks, Mom. And so I asked him, so what this looks like as far as practical, after he had calmed down, I found some quiet time with him and I said, I did my own work of like really recognizing the last 3 weeks had been really hard. And if I'm super honest, I had been pretty demanding, not a lot of questions, just a lot of telling, and kind of owned that with myself. And I said to him, does it feel like I'm just always telling you what to do? And he was like, yeah, as soon as I get home from school, you're on me about the routine. And he just like spilled. And my work was just to receive and to listen and not but him and not try to talk him out of how he was feeling, but just really be with him. And then, own it and then make a declaration around, okay, well, thank you. This is a place where I'm going to work really hard. And that's what I did. And I said, before I'm going to ask you if you want my feedback, I'm going to do more asking questions. And would that be useful? Yes, that'd be useful. And so we were able to turn it around. I'm sure we revisited the routine so that he had more of a feeling of shared power around it. But it was really useful for me to get checked like that. Right? Because in my ideal world, everybody just does what I say all the time because ultimately I have good plans.
Of course you do.
But it turns out other people think that same thing.
Yeah. So, what a bummer.
Yeah. That's just kind of one place. And, another place that my daughter is really, like I mentioned, really good at inviting me to check myself. And, and we're learning. It's crazy. How old are your kids?
My daughter is 8 and she is also my button pusher. And my son is 6.
Okay. So my experience of these teen years, mine are 16 and 13, is it's almost like we get to know each other again in a different way. I mean, they're the same kids, but they're so different. And the way that we are with them has to evolve, in my experience, because they are pulling away. They want autonomy. and they want to feel safe, and they want to know you're there, but they don't want you right there. It's like this whole...
That's an interesting push-pull.
It's such an interesting push-pull. And, and for me, this last couple of years have really been, her being very vocal about how she's experiencing me, and me being willing to hear her and acknowledge when she's spot on, which is usually she is. And that's really tough work. And inside of all of that, holding boundaries, right? And saying, yeah, I understand how you feel like that. And you have to plug your phone in the hallway every night, and so does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. It's a tough one. And, I find too that sometimes digging in and realizing what the work is, do you feel like all parent challenges have some work on the parent's end, or all?
I think there's definitely, at some level. Some is some more than others.
Yeah.
But it's never what you see on the surface.
Right.
Right? It's never as simple as, oh, just say this or just do this, and they won't hit each other, or they'll eat everything you make, or they won't do any risky behaviors as teenagers. Like, there's no... I like to say it's, if I had a magic wand, if I had a magic formula, I would be making a lot of money. But there just isn't. It's more complex than that. And it's really rooted in the relationship that we have with each other. Because when we're in really solid relationship, which I think requires us to be us parents, to be authentic, to be transparent, to find flexibility, to be open to taking their feedback. When we have that relationship, then when there are the times when we're not our best, we can recover. It's not quite so damaging as when that's not so developed. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I would love to share the example of what I'm going through with my daughter, because I think this would be a good way to illustrate the kinds of things you're talking about here. My daughter is a very strong-willed child, and she will put up a holy fight if she's not getting what she wants. And then, as an aftermath of us holding the boundary, she feels rejected and like we're picking on her and things in that vein, which is really, really challenging. So, for example, she wanted to use Pinterest to come up with some craft ideas over the weekend, and I put my foot down and said, no, how about we brainstormed together some ideas, and she pushed back for a good half an hour on this, and then was just angry and, saying all the mean things and being mean to her brother. And, and then she goes into the, well, you hate me and you don't want me to have anything, and I feel like a lot of times the way things play out, she feels picked on a little bit just because she is more challenging of a personality. And I'm not sure quite what to do with that, because I need to hold those boundaries with her, but I also want her to know that her being, everybody always says that that personality trait will serve her really well in the future, and I want her right. Not helping me right now, and I want her to be her authentic self, but also, hold the boundaries and not have her feel like she's the worst person for throwing a fit. So could you help me tease through that and see what kind of lessons we could come up with from that?
Well, the thing that I love about challenges like this, Carrie, is because I work with a lot of parents who come and have a very similar, the details are different, but it's like, how can I fix this? Right? And I always like to remind parents that, well, first of all, we make a lot of assumptions. Right. And it's not not terrible assumptions, but, I'll hear things like, well, he just wants attention, or, like she feels picked on, or, they're just teenager, there's this sometimes blanket statements. And so something that I often will invite parents to do is go to the source. And because you want to kind of excavate the iceberg, right? So I would go to your daughter and, using the Pinterest example, ask, tell her what you're noticing, right? So starting with, I notice when it feels like we don't, give you what you want, you get really angry. Like, remember this weekend with Pinterest and I said no, you got really upset about that. Can you tell me a little bit about that? Like, how did that feel? And you just open the door, right? And let her start talking. And as she talks, follow up with, tell me more about that. Is there anything else? Tell me more about that. Because what you want to know is, because that kind of behavior, especially following it with, I hate you, or you're so mean, or you're the worst mom, in positive discipline, we would call that a mistaken goal, or the belief behind the behavior would be, I don't belong. And so which hurts. So I'm going to hurt others as I feel hurt. So it's a mistaken idea about belonging. I have no doubt that you shower her with love and affection, and that you tell her that you love her. They are great perceivers. They're really bad interpreters. So if in the meantime she's noticing how much mom and dad harp on her and not on little brother, and and she's making up her own stories with her 8-year-old brain, right, which is not necessarily, this fully functioning, thoughtful, like, but does that make sense? No, right. It's 8. And so really getting clear on what her experience is, and then coming up with a plan about, so there are going to be times, hearing her, and she's going to tell you things and you're not going to like to hear it, right? Things like, our kids tell us things like, well, you're super mean, or you're unfair, or you're this, or you're that. And you just get to hear. You can have your own conversation about it, but really just hearing, because you're broadening your perspective of her experience, so that you can then come back and say, okay, so this is what I'm hearing is a problem for you. And in the future, there are going to be things that we can't do, right? Like that for timing's sake, or we have a boundary about social media or whatever, right? There is going to be times when you're going to be disappointed. So what's going to be helpful for you next time? And you start helping her recognize, like, oh yeah, this happens in life, right? This disappointment, embarrassment, all fear, it all happens in life. And so really what we want more than anything is to help them develop the skills to feel it without exploding all over everybody.
Yeah, it's so hard to witness, though. And especially because she's so tenacious with what she wants. It's really hard to be on the receiving end of that. But as you said, it is important to hold those boundaries, because she needs to learn that sometimes, like, you just don't get everything that you want.
Right. It is important to hold boundaries. It's also important to find flexibility, right? Like, I think that when boundaries become rigid, like when we're like, oh no, you are not going to win right now, right? We do it. That's not useful either. That's not useful either. So, I mean, it's why I work with people, for a minimum of 6 sessions, is because one conversation isn't necessarily going to, completely overhaul the climate of the home, but there's a lot of dynamics there too. So if you know that she's a kid who wants to feel a sense of power and influence, there's also looking on a larger scale at where is power and influence showing up in her life? Because if it's not available, she's going to take it where she can get it. Right. And so, and like real power and influence, not just like, do you want the red shirt or the blue shirt? But really like, hey, I need your help with menu planning. Will you help me with menu planning? Let's think about the week of meals that we're going to eat as a family. Right. And things where, and I don't really know what the Pinterest, I would need more information on that, but it was a no because you didn't have time,
just
or
because she had so much screen time. And
oh, got it. Okay.
Didn't want to give in on that, you know?
Sure. Yeah. And it could sound like, so it might sound like, oh man, that would be such a great resource. Pinterest is such a great resource for finding things like that. And you know what? Today we've had a lot of screen time. So let's think of some other ways that we can either brainstorm, or maybe there's someone we can call. Maybe we can call Crafty Grandma. Or, you know what, first thing tomorrow morning, if you want to, when I get up, if you want to pop in there and we can scroll around a little bit before we start the project, right? So it's less of like, no, not happening, and more of like, I see you and I see that you want to do this and I totally get it. And we're not going to jump on right now. And here's why. And then followed very quickly with, here are some alternatives.
Yeah, she's not real big on the alternatives.
Yeah, of course.
But relative to, just because of her personality and her being very firm in what she wants, she's just a more difficult child. And then, she feels that. We struggle with her more than we do her brother. And I think that leads to the, the feelings of, less than or whatever. So what recommendations would you have for that?
Well, I think that one-on-one time is gold. So as much one-on-one time, and you're claiming it like, I'm so glad that we have this special time, and it's really important to me that you and I get to connect, and, doing things with her, just the two of you, or just her and her dad, is really important in reestablishing relationship. And it sounds like too, and I think that so many behaviors come back to self-regulation, and self-regulation is a learned skill. So another place to go is just get really curious and start to show her, connect dots between different places where she is able to handle disappointment, and noticing like, oh, we weren't able to go to the restaurant that you wanted to go to tonight, and you were really easygoing about it. What helped you? I remember one time going to a basketball game at University of Washington, and my son, I don't even remember what he had in his hand, but he was tossing it into the bushes, couldn't find it. And I was like, oh God, right? Like, we're on the sidewalk on our way into the gym, and I'm just preparing myself for the, and for what, and he didn't, and he was like, ugh. Okay, let's go. And I was like, this is a golden opportunity, right? To say, wow, I thought that was going to be really hard for you. And it wasn't. What helped you? Because we don't always think about what is useful to us when we're bumping up against a challenging emotion or circumstance or situation. And so the more that she can recognize, like, I do know how to self-regulate, I do have tools and skills, the more likely, then it'll start to become, over time, right, easier for her to access those when she needs them. So I think that, which is a proactive, right? That's not an in-the-moment thing, but it's definitely something that is so important for all of us, right, to be practicing and understanding self-regulation, because I didn't think I had a problem with self-regulation until I had children. And I was like, whoa.
Right.
That came really fast, that anger, that disappointment or whatever. So,
yeah, for sure. Yeah, we ended up, most of this explosion happened in the car. And when we got home, I was like, maybe you should just go take some quiet time and calm down. And I came up with this thing that I do with her, like squeezing the anger out. It's just being kind of silly and like pretending it's coming out of her ears. And I tried doing that with her, and she wasn't having it. So she was clearly still in the, the exploded brain state, right?
Yeah.
So I left her for a few more minutes, and eventually she came by and she's like, Mom, I think I'm ready for that. So, she eventually did calm down, and we were able to have a rational conversation about it. But it's still kind of tough witnessing the explosions. But I'm curious, what do you think the lesson in this whole experience with my daughter is for me?
Well, what is she calling you into? What is she forcing you to practice?
I think probably being firm with the boundaries and accepting her explosions and being okay with her being the way that she is.
Yeah. How are you with firmness typically?
I have a tendency to be more lenient.
Okay, great. Yeah, so definitely. Yeah, she's stretching you into an area that isn't familiar, which is why it's so uncomfortable. Right?
And that just made me think I have a hard time setting limits for myself too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Light bulb.
Yeah, right? Everyone, you can hire me. I think that really kind of questioning, what is my child stretching me into right now? Like, what am I being forced to practice? And when your answer is like being super bitchy, like, no, that's not the lesson, right? But it's like, wow, I'm having to, like, some of the things that have really come up for me is surrendering my agenda. Acceptance, like you said, not only accepting, her meltdown, but like accepting who she is, right? Acceptance and surrender are big ones for me. Me and like how, two places that aren't my go-to with my kids are lightness. I tend to be a little rigid.
Which is funny because you're such a lighthearted person.
So it's I fool everyone. But I tend to be pretty rigid. I think it has to do with that control and having my agenda, which I think is so fabulous. So they really, letting go, surrender, acceptance, lightness, those are the places that my kids really stretch me into. And trust, especially as we're moving into the teen years, like just trusting that they don't want to be losers. Like they don't want to be, addicted to drugs and pregnant at 18. They want to, have good lives, and they want to be connected, and yeah. So
beautiful. Do you want to plug your book real quick before it goes out?
Yes. Well, my book is called Joyful Courage, Taking Control. Oh gosh, look it. Now that I'm saying it out loud, I'm like, what is it called? Oh, Calming the Drama. I do know what my book is called. Calming the Drama and Taking Control of Your Parenting Journey. And it's, it's personal growth disguised as a parenting book. And it's less about what to do with your kids and more about how to support yourself in your self-regulation so that you can show up to all the trials and challenges that exist because our kids are kids. Yeah, and I have a 3-part a strategy, a tool that I share in the book for parents to begin the practice of bringing more mindfulness and consciousness and intention into their whole day, so that, when you're in the car and they're freaking out and they need you to stay grounded and centered, you have something to hold on to that's going to support you in that.
That sounds awesome. When does it hit the shelves?
It is, again, I should have been more prepared, Carrie.
That's okay.
It is hitting so it launches May 20th. And cool. I believe it's April 19th is when pre-order opens.
Oh, perfect. So we can link to the pre-order for this.
Yeah. Yes, definitely. I will have a link for you for that.
Very cool. I have one last question for you, and that is, how do you connect to your true you?
How do I connect to my true you? I love to journal, and I love stillness and guided meditations. So I try to have a pretty regular practice of those things. And I love personal growth and development. I love workshops and opportunities to circle up with other women, so that it's a intentional space to be my authentic self. Yeah.
Beautiful.
Those are my things. And I don't know how not to be my true you. I'm not very good at faking it.
Yeah, I'm not really either. But like finding those activities that like in the middle of the hustle and bustle of life to center you back.
Yeah,
So
definitely. Yeah.
So, thanks again for being here, Casey.
You're so welcome.